So today I'm making vegan Chinese pineapple buns. Now, Chinese bakery items are actually one of the most requested on this channel. It's actually not too hard. If you guys have seen my Hokkaido milk bread special, that milk bread recipe is really nearly the basis for a lot of the Chinese bakery item recipes. So I have actually a lot of bakery items coming up for you guys, so I can't wait to show you, especially this one. So let's head over to the kitchen and then let's get started. Okay, so the unique thing about a milk bread recipe is that it actually starts off with a roux. So I have 3 tablespoons and a teaspoon of flour with about a half a cup of water, and I'm just cooking it over medium heat just until it gets like this. So it really only takes about a minute or 2 until you get to this kind of nice soft paste. So you just want to put that aside and let that cool. So during that time, we can start on the rest of the dough. So I have about a 1/4 cup of coconut milk along with some demerara sugar, and I'm just gonna mix that all together up until I think that it's nice and combined and the sugar has melted just a little bit. And then I'm gonna put in 1 package of yeast, which is about 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast, and all of that goes in. So I'm just making sure that all of that yeast gets nice and submerged and kind of rehydrated. A thing about this though is that because there is a fair amount of sugar and also the coconut milk is thicker, you're not really gonna get all of that bubbling that you typically do with just, sugar, water, and yeast. So don't be expecting that too much, but your yeast should be fine. So after you've let the yeast ferment for a couple of minutes and your roux is actually cooled, you can feel free to dump everything into a blender. Now I have it on a dough hook attachment. You guys can certainly do this by hand in a bowl as well. And I'm just mixing it on low speed up until just everything gets combined, because the roux tends to be a little bit thicker and it's harder to add in. So next is my mixture for an egg substitute. It's 2 tablespoons of water, 1 teaspoon of oil, and 2 teaspoons of baking powder. And I find that it's actually a really good egg substitute if you don't have it. And then go in the rest of the coconut milk. So a 1/4 cup goes in there, and you just want to blend it up until just everything is nice and smooth. A good tip for this is you want this dough to be more on the wetter side. So if you do see that the dough starts getting to be a little bit dry, feel free to add in just a couple more tablespoons of coconut oil, okay? So this is actually, next is the flour. So I have a flour and then also a pinch of salt in there. So it's 3 cups of all-purpose flour, and I'm basically adding them in 3 installments. Again, because I want to make sure that this dough does not get over dried. So I'm adding it little by little, and if I do see that it is getting a little bit dry, I will put in some more coconut milk into it. So once the flour is mixed in, I want you guys to see how wet the dough actually is. It's sticking to the sides of the bowl, and you're definitely thinking, oh, this needs more flour, but you have to wait for it. You're going to actually need it for about 10 minutes on medium heat. And before I continue, I want to show you the texture of it. So this is right at the beginning of that 10 minutes, and you can see it's sticking to my hands, and you can't even stretch it because it's just not, the gluten is not developed yet. It's not at that stage, but definitely this is the texture that you are going to be working with at first, so don't worry about it. So this is right around 10 minutes, and I wanted to show you guys again how the dough has changed. So it's still kind of sticky to my fingers, but this time it stretches out a lot more and it doesn't just break because the gluten has had a chance to kind of develop. So this is kind of the stage that you're at. You can't totally make the clear glass window pane. If you guys make breads, that's sort of just the test that they do. So I'm just going to put it back onto medium speed, and this is going to go for another 10 minutes. But first I'm going to add in 2 tablespoons of earth balance, and that is just going to bring the moisture right back in. But initially it will the dough will kind of look loopy again at first, and it'll look like it has way too much moisture in it, but give it another 10 minutes and it will definitely shape up. So this is after the 10 minutes, and the dough has really gotten a whole lot more elastic, and I'm stretching it right now, and you can see that it doesn't really break. I'm able to stretch the dough pretty thin, and you can kind of almost see through it, and this is actually the texture that we want. So now we're just basically gonna dump everything into a floured surface, and you just wanna knead it by hand for about 1 to 2 minutes so that you can form that nice round dough ball shape, because it's just gonna make it a lot easier when the dough is expanding and fermenting. So you can see this technique of kind of stretching it out and then pushing it back into the center, and it should give you a nice ball of dough like so. So it's a good idea before you put the dough back in to kind of grease the insides, because it's going to make it release a lot easier later. So just put a towel on that, put it into a nice warm place, and then just wait about, I don't know, like 1 to 2 hours up until the ball kind of doubles up in size. Meanwhile, it's time to make the famous crackly topping for the pineapple bun. So for that, I'm going to start off with 1 cup of cake flour, followed by about 3 tablespoons of sugar. After that, this is coconut milk powder, and you can find it usually at any of the Asian grocery stores, and some people put milk powder in just to richen up the topping just a little bit, so I'm going to put in a tablespoon of that. And then finally, the last 2 ingredients, this is what's going to make the top really crackle, and it's a 1/4 teaspoon of baking powder, and then this is ammonium bicarbonate, and I found this at the Asian grocery store as well. We're going to put in 1/3 of a teaspoon of that, and it's very similar to baking soda. Be careful though when you guys breathe this in, because it can sting as well. But baking soda, and if you don't have it, you can substitute for baking soda, but I definitely think that this makes the top crack a lot more. And then finally, so those were the dry ingredients. This is the wet ingredients. So I put in 6 tablespoons of earth balance, and I mix it with a 1/4 teaspoon of annatto seeds, and I basically heated it up in the microwave for 30 seconds, and I swished it around, and when it got to this color of like kind of this deep yellow egg yolk color, I strained out the annatto seeds, because if you keep that in there, it will start darkening up in color and kind of turn like a bright orange, okay? So basically you're just whisking that all together, and I think it's probably better if you use a spatula, because afterwards it can get pretty hard. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to roll it out between 2 sheets of plastic wrap, and you want to roll it to about 1/8 of an inch. And I actually tried rolling these a little bit thicker previously, and I found that the toppings, they don't crack as much when it's not as thin. So anyways, these guys go into the freezer for about 30 minutes, just until, you know, it gets some shape and form. So this is really after the 2 hours, and you can see that it's just grown into this like nice big balloon ball. And again, this dough has to be a little bit wet, because I've made it before where when it was too dry, the yeast had a really hard time to expand, because there's a lot of stuff in this dough, a lot of fats and whatnot. So you just want to make sure that it's soft enough for the yeast to actually expand. So for pineapple buns, I'm going to cut this dough up into 8 portions, and I find that that's just right about the size of how the Chinese bakeries would serve them. So basically what I'm going to do is, like I did with the big ball of dough before, I'm just going to tuck all of the dough underneath and then turn it basically into a circle, and then do the same thing with the rest. Okay, so I'm going to place these guys onto a sheet of parchment paper before I deal with the topping. So here's the topping. This is after 30 minutes. It is still fairly malleable, and it'll melt really quickly. So if you guys try to, kind of do this quickly. So I'm taking a circular cookie cutter that's going to be just around the size of the bun, and I find it actually is really easy, or easier, if you take an offset spatula, and that'll help you as well. And also if you use the plastic wrap to help you as well, just like lift up the plastic wrap and then have the topping basically stick to the cookie cutter, because that's kind of the easier way of transporting everything. So this is how these guys look afterwards. There's a little bit of cracking here and there just from the plastic wrap, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to let it rest in a warm place again for about 30 minutes, up until it kind of grows just a little bit more like so. So this is basically the final brushing. So I've taken a 1/4 cup of Earth Balance again, and I've mixed it with about 1/8 of a teaspoon of annatto seeds just to bring out kind of more of that yellow, kind of eggy color, because since we're not using eggs. So this goes into a 375-degree oven for about 10 minutes, and then you want to turn that down to 350 and then cook it for about another like 8 minutes or so, up until they're golden brown, just like this. And you can see how crackly and nice the topping is, and it just makes your house smell so good. As usual, I am going to rip into the bread for you just so that you can see like how nice and kind of like soft and rich everything is. Like I had said before, this milk bread is just slightly sweetened, but mixed with like that crunchy top coating, it's just divine. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this recipe. I know I definitely miss Chinese bakery items as a vegan, so hopefully this will help you guys out. As usual, if you want to see more recipes like this, remember to hit that like and subscribe button, and I will see you guys again next time. Bye!